Welcome everybody to this edition of Attention Talk Video. I'm your host, ADHD and Attention Coach, Jeff Copper. Our topic today is when you're doing a lot of work, should you take a break? You know, that really depends on the type of work that you're doing. I think it's real important to understand working memory, how it works and what's kind of going on, and then take a look at the type of work you're doing in order to answer that question. I've done a lot of videos on working memory, and one part of working memory is the loading of information in your mind. I call it the booting up process. And I talk about when you turn a computer on, the operating system is taken out of the hard drive and loaded into random access memory. It takes a while for that booting up process to work. Now, computers are a little quicker than they used to be, but I used to have a computer, literally it used to take 5 minutes to boot up. And in the morning, I would turn the computer on. I would go get a cup of coffee, waiting for all that to get ready. And then imagine I start to do a task like write a letter in Microsoft Word, and all of a sudden the electricity just goes off. Now, I live in Tampa, Florida. On a nice sunny day, that happens on occasion. Who knows why? But anyway, just follow with me. So when that happens, the computer screen goes blank. So I have to push the button. I got to wait another 5 minutes for the computer to get booted up. And then I might open up Microsoft Word and reread what I was reading since I got auto save. And then I think, what was I going to write next? And I start writing, and imagine I, get another sentence into, and all of a sudden the electricity goes off. Push the button. I got to wait for it to boot up again. This time I get distracted. I come back. It's 10 minutes later. I open up the Microsoft Word document, and I got maybe 3 or 4 sentences. Now, what I want to share with you is the back side of your head is like a filing cabinet, and the front part is working memory. And when you're reading information, you have to load that in your working memory. You have to retrieve knowledge. So I do a lot of presentations, and when I've got to sit down, it requires a lot of executive function. I've got to sit down and I've got to study the material in order to load it all into my mind, just like the operating system and the applications. And that takes time. And it's very, very effortful. And it's not really, honestly, not very exciting. So that process takes a while. So when I'm working with people with ADHD, if you've got something where you're having a hard time getting started, or, once I get into the flow, I'm good, typically that is something where you're having to effortlessly boot up your working memory. Now, people call me all the time, and I can tell that they're struggling with working memory. Have you ever noticed that you're at the dining room table and your significant other comes in and asks a question and you bite their head off? It's because you're engrossed in this effortful thinking. And if you get distracted, it's like your computer will get unplugged and you'll have to start over again. Again, reboot the process. For people with ADHD, getting all that loaded in their mind is very, very difficult, and stopping and having to restart would be a huge problem. So in that situation, there's like an emotional reaction. They lash out at somebody, not really aware of what's going on. So how does that relate to taking a break? Well, if you're doing a task that doesn't require a lot of loading of executive functioning, you're doing lots of work, it might be good just to take a mental break. But if you're doing something that requires a lot of effortful loading of that, you really don't want to take a break, because you literally will have to come back over and start over again, the booting up process, if too much time's been delayed. And you'll find yourself not wanting to do it, having a hard time getting your head back into it. So the point of today's insight is to realize the role working memory plays in the thinking process, and understand if you're doing something that's really, really complicated and taking a while for you to get into the flow, I'm not so sure taking a break is always really a good idea. Whereas if you got something and it's changing quite frequently, you might really want to take a break. I can tell you personally, there's certain presentations I sit down, it takes a lot of effortful work. I don't coach on Fridays. That's the day where I do things that require a lot of boot up, so I can work on them all day long without having to stop and start. Anyway, I hope this gives you pause to think. Also on the booting up process, if you've got something that requires a lot of effortful loading in, you don't really want to schedule it where you got to leave in the middle of it and go to another meeting. You really want to have the time to get into it and finish it, because if you start and you stop, you might have a hard time coming back to it. So anyway, just a little tip, insight for you to think about. If you're new to our channel, please hit the subscribe button. Each week we give a tip like this to help those with ADHD gain insight on the process of thinking and ADHD so you can better manage it. Thoughts and comments, please. Always love to hear from you. Does this make some sense? Do you have some rituals that you do? Do you find it easy to take breaks on something like this? Please, love to hear from you. With that, we hope you've enjoyed this edition of Attention Talk Video. Take care.